Hello again, everyone. This is Chris Ostrowski from About, and in this video lesson we're going to take a look at something that's absolutely essential that all Oracle DBAs know about, and it's something called archive log mode. Archive log mode is a way of running your Oracle database in a particular mode that gives you an incredible amount of flexibility in case something bad happens to your database. And when we say something bad happens to your database, we're talking about corruption in a data file, a lost data file, something like that. If you run your database in archive log mode, you have to do a little bit more work up front to set things up, and you have to do a little more work on the back end to kind of monitor the archive log directory. But the benefits of doing those couple of things makes your life so much easier as an Oracle database administrator. In these next couple of slides we're going to take a look at all of the different benefits. It's almost impossible to justify not running your database in archive log mode, and we'll see why that is in the next couple of slides. So when we're talking about archive log mode, what we're really talking about is running the database in such a way that I can recover the database relatively easily. So we're going to take a look at the differences between hot and cold backups. We'll look at the mechanism of how archive log works, and then we'll take a look at what it takes to put your database into archive log mode. It's relatively simple. So let's do a quick look at the different pros and cons that go along with cold backups and hot backups. Cold backups are when you shut the database down. They're called cold because there's nothing happening in the database. You shut the database down, you back up all your data files and everything that goes along with your database, you start up the database again. Hot backups are backups that occur while the database is up and running and actually processing transactions. There's a lot of cool things that go on behind the scenes that allow you to back up your database in this manner. Obviously, if you're running a production database that has to be available 24/7, cold backups are not an option for you. As databases get larger and larger, cold backups lose their effectiveness because the window to actually back up a database in that method takes longer and longer. The database grows really large. You can shut down your database. It might take you 10 hours to copy all the data files over to a backup directory. As the database grows, that window is going to get larger and larger. A lot of times organizations can't do that type of environment, can't do those types of backups. So hot backups give you a lot more flexibility, and in an upcoming slide we're going to look at an absolutely key feature of this that I haven't mentioned yet, but I will in that upcoming slide. The biggest pro to a cold backup is that it's easy. Shut down the database, copy all the data files, all the other files that make up your database, start the database up again, you got a whole backup. Nice and easy. The biggest limitation to cold backups is that they're limited. We've already mentioned that the database has to be down in order to do a cold backup, and that's not feasible for a lot of organizations. It's also a really key feature about cold backups, like I said, I'm going to mention in a slide upcoming, that make them of limited use for most organizations. The pro of a hot backup is that it's incredibly flexible. The database is up and running. There's no interruption to your end users. Performance might slow down a little bit as Oracle is doing all its backup in the background, but if you schedule it in such a way that you can do it in off hours where there's not a lot of people on your system, usually the impacts are pretty minimal. It's a little harder to do a hot backup. There's stuff you have to do up front. There's more things you have to know when you're actually doing the backup and when it comes time to recover your database. It's a little more complex. But the flexibility that hot backups give you is just incredible. The only way you can do a hot backup is if your database is in archive log mode. If your database is not in archive log mode, you cannot do hot backups. The only option available to you is cold backups. Like I said before, there's almost no way to justify not running a database in archive log mode. How does archive log mode actually work? Well, we set up this archive log directory. And this directory is nothing more than a file directory on your system somewhere. And we point to it using the init.org parameters, either log archive dest _n or log archive destination. Log archive destination _n allows us to specify multiple locations for us to save these files in. If we want to be super secure and make sure that we have multiple copies of these archive log files, we can do that. Or we can just specify log archive destination. So Oracle uses these files called online transaction files. Sometimes they're called online redo log files. These redo log files, there has to be at least 2 of them inside your database instance. Most DBAs will set up 3 or more. These files contain raw data. They're not formatted inside the Oracle data files to maximize retrieval. They're just kind of raw transactions that are out there. And Oracle uses these in case something catastrophic happens to the database, like a power failure. Even if the data hasn't been written out to the data files yet, Oracle can recover those transactions by looking at the raw information that's inside these online redo log files. And they're written to in a circular manner. So Oracle will write these raw transactions to log file 1. Once that log file is filled up, it starts writing to log file 2. Once that's filled up, it starts writing to log file 3. If your database is not in archive log mode, it overwrites those files. Just keep circling through them over and over again. But if your database is in archive log mode, what happens is as soon as log file 1 fills up, it gets copied to this archive log directory. Once it's complete, and all the transactions are going into log file number 2, once 2 fills up and switches over to number 3, that file gets copied over to the archive log directory. Transactions get written to log file 3. Once he fills up, that file gets written over to the online archive log directory when the switch occurs from log file to log file. Then as 1 fills up again, another copy is written to the archive log directory. So this happens over and over again throughout the transaction processing of your database. So one of the things that you have to do on the back end is monitor this archive log directory. You have to make sure that that directory doesn't fill up, because if your database is in archive log mode and that archive log directory fills up and no more files can be written there, the database just freezes. Doesn't give you an error message, just doesn't process any transactions anymore. Why? Because let's say log file 1 is filled up and it's ready to switch to the online redo log number 2. It can't copy online redo log number 1 over into the archive log directory. So the database just kind of freezes and says, hey, you got to do something here so I can continue processing transactions. Like I said, it doesn't give you an error message. You can still query the database, you just can't do any transactions against it. So there's a little more work you have to do up front to set up your archive log directory, to set up the parameters inside the init.aura of your database, and then to monitor that archive log directory. When it comes time to recover your database, you have a tremendous amount more flexibility. Why? Well, think about it. If I do a cold backup on my database where I actually shut down the database, back up all the data files, start up my database again, if something bad happens to my database and I need to recover it, I can only recover the database up to the last cold backup. If that cold backup was done a week ago, or worse, a month ago, I've lost an entire week or an entire month worth of transactions. I recover my database. The database is as it was from a week ago or a month ago. If I'm in a highly transactional environment, imagine what's going to happen to me as a DBA if I have to go to my boss and say, well, we can recover the database, but we just lost an entire month's worth of work. I better start updating my resume because I don't think they're going to keep me around. We've already seen the flexibility of hot backups. We've talked about how the database can be up and running while the backup is occurring. So I have the initial flexibility of not having to shut down my database and continue processing transactions. I also have the ability to recover to a specific point in time. Most likely, it's going to be the point in time when something really bad happened to my database, like I lost a data file or some kind of corruption happened in my database. How can I get this point in time recovery? Well, I have all of those archive log files in my archive log directory. What did we say were in those log files? Raw transactions, transactions that haven't been formatted for the data files, so they're just raw transactions. When it comes time for me to recover my database, I can simply copy the files back from my last hot backup and then start applying those archive logs. Applying archive logs is nothing more than telling Oracle, hey, go out there, read all of the raw transactions that are in those archive logs and apply them against the database. If everything is set up properly, I should be able to recover my database right up to the point of failure. By recovering all my data files from my last hot backup and then applying all the archive redo logs, I can get it right up to the point that something bad happened inside my database and recover my database that way. So not only do I have the flexibility of saying I don't have to shut down my database to do my hot backups, but I can also recover my database right up to the point of failure. Combination of these two things makes it almost impossible to justify not running a database in archive log mode. How do I check to see if my database is in fact in archive log mode? It's real simple. It's a simple query. Select log mode from $V database, and you'll be told if your database is in archive log mode or not. If it's not in archive log mode, how do I put it in archive log mode? The only way to put a database into archive log mode that isn't already in archive log mode is we're going to have to shut it down. So to put the database instance into archive log mode, I'm assuming you've already set your init.aura parameters for where you want the log files to be written out to. We log in as our sysdba. We have to shut down the database in immediate mode. We don't want to do a shutdown abort. Shutdown abort shuts down the database in an inconsistent state, so we definitely want to do a shutdown immediate. We want to start up the database, but we want to put it into mount mode. If you don't understand the different mount modes that are out there, the different modes that you can start up your database on, we have another video that talks about actually starting up the database and all of the different modes that are out there. But what startup mount allows us to do is read the init.aura file, check all of the different data files that are out there, but not actually open the database for transactions. We have to get to this strange mode of the database in order to do this. Once we have the database started up in mount mode, we can issue a command called alter database archive log. Once we do that, Oracle reads the information from the init.aura, looks at that log destination parameter that we specified a couple of slides ago, and says, okay, I'm going to start writing out my information to that file based on the transactions. Once the database is in archive log mode, we simply alter database open, and our database is now in archive log mode processing transactions. Hopefully this gave you a real good overview as to why archive log mode is important, how to put the database into archive log mode, and how you can justify to the people inside your organization why you have to do that. And also understand that after the work is done up front of putting your database in archive log mode, there's still a little bit of work on the back end to make sure you understand that you have to maintain that directory, make sure that directory doesn't fill up, and if your database does lock up for whatever reason, it's one of the first things you can look at when it comes time to fix your database. In other videos, we'll take a look at how to recover a database that is corrupted or has crashed for whatever reason using the archive logs that are available to you.